Hey folks, as promised, we're going live here for Scott Abel AMA session. Ask me anything, that means. So if you want to just type in a question, and whether it's about any of my programs, coaching, diet, eating issues.
Just type in a question, and whether it's...
And just let me know, and we'll take it from there. So I'll wait on you guys. Lots of projects in the works for the new year, so we'll maybe talk about that as well. So we were supposed to start at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and here we are. So if you got a question, just type it in. Be happy to answer it. Yes, I am spoiling you, Kenneth, 2 days in a row. It's more impromptu, though, when Andy's here, because we like to, we just got our work done for the day, so we thought we'd go live and do a few things and get Andy more acclimated to public speaking and going live with stuff, and so that was good. So our people are signing on now. They should realize in the future, if I ever schedule an AMA session or a webinar, whatever you want to call this, that I'm always early. I'm early for everything. So, but we're good. So I appreciate the comment, Tori. Thank you. If anybody got a question? So hopefully everyone got our email blast about the AMA session. So yeah, you want to talk about innovation training, MET training principles, Abel principles, diet principles, food and eating issues seems to be a common one these days, but always is in January. Then feel free to ask. Obviously, I'm dressed to go out, so I'm not going to be demonstrating any exercises or anything like that. So, okay, I find that on nights and following nights that I do squats, I have trouble sleeping. I'll wake up after a few hours and then have a hard time getting back to sleep, or wake up earlier than usual in the morning. I'm pretty sure the insomnia is exercise induced. Yeah, that's not uncommon. Exercise induced insomnia can happen. Usually it can be from too much CNS stimulation, but it can also be from going beyond your work capacity. So you get a really heightened adrenal response. When you get that heightened adrenal response, it doesn't just settle down because your workout is over. So that's something to keep in mind. But that's a good way, Lance, you bring to mind the whole topic of what I'm always talking about, which is biofeedback. So that's part of biofeedback. And biofeedback, we look at things that are incidental versus things that become sort of patterns. So if that becomes a pattern, then it's something to look at. If it's a restless night here and there, then that's what we call incidental biofeedback, which is, if it's not a pattern, then it really has nothing to do, or it could just be incidental to an isolated scenario, like a fight with your girlfriend or something like that. So we look for patterns in biofeedback, and patterns help us determine which way to go. Add exercise, subtract exercise, slow the pace, add the pace. This is another scenario where actually having a coach really puts you ahead of the game, because you've got somebody who's taking stock of your biofeedback and making sense of it for you, and then advising you as you go along. So that's a good point, actually. So yes, absolutely. Training too far beyond max work capacity, or what we call optimal work capacity, can affect things like sleep patterns and throw you a little bit off, and that's essential biofeedback. That's your body trying to communicate with you. So that was a great question. Anything else? Got lots of people still signing in, so that's a good thing. One of the things I want to talk to people about all the time, especially lately, is your mental energy and your source of energy. A lot of people that have food and eating issues don't realize that trying to adhere to too many rules and regulations surrounding a diet strategy can produce anxiety. And like I always say, anxious mindset produces anxious behavior. So you'll actually end up finding that Being all stressed about diet and following a diet or being perfect on a diet will actually be what sets in motion self-sabotaging behaviors. So for a lot of people, it's not so much about finding the next diet, because none of the diets ever work for you long term. It's actually about finding that path to calm patient energy. And that's another benefit that coaching can do. Because, like I always say in my principles, quality of mindset determines quality of behavior. So an anxious mind produces anxious behavior, and that can lead to self-sabotage. So we've got to keep these things in mind. Okay, another question. What are some strategies for addressing muscle imbalances and/or symmetry? Good question. One of the strategies to keep in mind is proper program design based on sound principles of exercise physiology and innervation training. Innervation training dictates that ranges and planes of motion and patterns of exercise actually affect fiber recruitment in different ways. If this wasn't true, then every power lifter would have a better body than every bodybuilder, and you wouldn't need to have a sport of bodybuilding. But it's not true that strength equals development, and strength definitely doesn't equal balanced development. So what you have there is proper programming, and I have a course called Mastery of Program Design that we run every so often that gets into all those things. So very, very, very important. Okay, let me just go. Now the questions are coming in fast and furious. We love that. So muscle imbalances I don't worry about too much. That's overstated in the industry. It's way overstated. Take someone like Venus Williams in tennis. If she's been for 20 years having a racket in her right hand and swinging it, she's never going to create a balanced scenario on the other side of her body. Her body is going to be right dominant, and there's nothing really wrong with that, but you can use that to your advantage and create what we call cross-innervation, where you can capitalize on the effects of the strong side of your body in terms of the way you train and the way you prioritize your training, especially with single-side exercises, and you'll get a cross-innervation effect from doing that. That's something that's hard to sort of explain, but it's hopefully you understand when I talk about it that way. So the whole thing about muscle imbalances is kind of overstated and overrated in this industry, and this industry likes to do that with a lot of things because they can capitalize on the marketing of it. And then you see what we call, what frustrates me the most is what I call vogue trends. 5 years ago everybody and their brother was on a foam roller. Well, now foam rolling is on his way out, right? Anyone who's in the know has been saying, as I've been saying all along, that the value of foam rolling isn't really that great. As a matter of fact, I don't advise any of my clients to do that. So how often to train each muscle group per week? Well, that depends on the structure of a program. Sometimes twice a week is good. My hard gainer solution, for instance, is training the body every day, but in a different way, considering intra-workout recovery and inter-workout recovery. So recovery within workouts and recovery between workouts. And for hard gainers, that's always been the balancing situation, because they try to train like bodybuilders and what the advanced bodybuilders are doing who aren't hard gainers, and they run into problems in terms of recovery capacity both within a workout and between workouts. So that is essential to program design. So now your questions are coming in so fast, that's good, but give me some time to get to them. And if you want to do follow-up questions, that's fine too. So Kat asks, you train hard every day, CrossFit and heavy weights, and you don't eat crap food, but you still have excess body fat around the hips, hesitant to calorie count, I don't blame you there, and it drained me. How can you lose fat? Well, I have to first qualify myself, Kat, by saying I'm not a big fan of CrossFit, never have been a fan of CrossFit. There's a lot of issues to do with CrossFit in terms of, workout of the day mentality and not considering someone's current conditioning and fitness level and things like that. I always say that a real good coach fits the person to the program, doesn't try to fit the program, or fits the program to fit the person, doesn't try to get the person to fit the program. And any of those things that try to slot everyone into a one-size-fits-all protocol, it becomes problematic. So I'm not really a big CrossFit fan at all. So now, excess fat around the hips, well, the first place you store it is the last place you'll lose it, and that has to do with a lot of spot enzyme activity. So even though we say spot reduction is a myth, That's only partially true, because the enzymes that are active to store adipose tissue in one area tend to be more active in the fat storing way. But without looking at your, without doing what I call an assessment, a full assessment, what you're eating, how you're structured your diet strategy, it's really hard to say how to lose fat. But I'm all 100% behind you in not resorting to calorie counting. I really find that leads people down a very dark path, and a hard one to get out of as well, especially if they start counting grams, counting calories, trying to ratio macros and stuff. I mean, that's not a life. And as I said in my podcast yesterday, there's an old saying that the unexamined life is not worth living, but the over-examined life isn't really living at all. And oftentimes we see that with people who become diet obsessed. I mean, all they're doing all day long is focusing on food and numbers, and that's not a life. And that's not what this industry is supposed to be about. So I would say, I would be looking at something for you, Kat. I'd be looking at something along the lines of having an assessment done, not in terms of body fat percentage and stuff. Again, get away from the numbers, but having an assessment done on what a proper training program might look for you, and realize that not one program is going to solve everybody's individual need. In other words, it's not like you do A to B. Sometimes you have to go from A to B to C to D, and you sequence through 4 or 5 programs before you get the results, because you have to coax your body into having that work capacity that can do more, but do more without burning out, and that's really important as well. Hang on a sec. So a question from Robert, or a statement. Last June I started training implementing the Hard Gainer solution. Still enjoying it? Yeah, it's a really popular program of mine. We'll stay with it for a while longer. How do I continue my training post Hard Gainer? I lost your question there. Well, I would say, Robert, there it is. Should it be MET or more functionally related training? I wouldn't say more functionally related training, no, and not necessarily MET. If you're moving from Hard Gainer into something else, you could try my Physique After 50 protocol. That sort of was built upon the basis of the Hard Gainer solution. I did design it for someone, in the over 50 demographic, but it has relevance beyond that. So you might want to try something like that. Again, I don't know how old you are or anything like that, but sometimes that has to be kept into consideration. You don't want to do too much ballistic movement and stuff after a certain age, especially around the 50 mark. That would be a huge mistake. So a lot of the MET training have those explosive moves in it, but I've also removed a lot of those from MET training and then rebranded them under another name. So as many people know who follow me, I have over like 700 programs that I have. So people will often write me and say, well, can you describe your program to me? And that just shows the limited mindset of the fitness industry. I don't have a program. I have hundreds of programs. And the reason there is, like I said earlier, you have to make the program fit the person and not just slot every person into one program. That's a real bugaboo for me in this industry that keeps thinking in such myopic, one-dimensional terms. You have to treat the individual as an individual, but still be true to the principles of exercise physiology and my innovation training principles and MET principles. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm trying to. Okay, I got another question. What's the best way to get macros down? I don't believe in that stuff, Tori. I think it's nonsense. Again, no one should be a slave to numbers. That just eventually leads to a prison you can't get out of, and you start living your life inside the thin cage. And that's not freedom. So, and don't worry about pre-workout powders and nutrients. That stuff is so overstated. Unless you're a professional athlete who is training at max work capacity all the time, professional hockey player, professional football player, etc., then these industry one-size-fits-all gimmicks to sell supplements is really just overstated, and it's not even useful. So if you're just a normal person looking to transform your physique, then pre, peri, and post-workout nutrition is really not as important as balanced meals throughout the day, and there's all kinds of research that supports that. So let me, boy, you guys are really keeping me hopping today. So just to reiterate, I'm not a big believer in tracking macros. There's no science behind that other than it starts creating this slave to numbers mentality, and I don't think that's healthy for anyone, and I don't think that's fit. So again, you have to start asking when you're following a fitness regimen, what is this regimen doing for my life? What is this regimen doing to my life? And if you're stopped living your life because you're tracking macros and things like that, then you've lost more than you can ever gain. So, okay, I got a question about glute training. Do I believe in a warm-up for glutes before you train them? Well, everyone should have two kinds of warm-ups, right? What we call GPP, General Preparation Phase, and you can go to my Scott Abel Fitness website for a video on a GPP warm-up that you should do every single day, which includes creating mobility and sort of greasing the wheels of the major joints of the body, the shoulders, the hips, the knees, and then also making sure you're unloading your knees and hips with tubing or TRX, etc. And then also a glute training. If someone needs specific glute training, that requires assessment. I do have a specific glute training, both in short, as in triplexes, but I also have a glute training circuit. I'm just looking for the right lady to film doing it, and then we will put that to market. But so far, living here in Kelowna, I haven't been able to find anyone I want to shoot that with, because I want it to be the right female specimen, and then we want to shoot it as a product. But I have a couple glute circuits that are done twice a week in conjunction with certain programs that will really lift and round the glutes and create that sexy look that the women are after. So that was a good question. But after the GPP, the general preparation phase, in training we have what's called physical rehearsal. And physical rehearsal just means that you start including within the GPP phase the actual first exercise of whatever movement you're doing that particular day, or whatever complex you're doing that day. So you do a couple lighter preparation sets. You have to let the joints know what's coming. Muscles are pretty resilient almost at any age, but as you get older, and in general, you gotta protect your joints, and you do so by having a proper warm-up. So muscles can take a lack of warm-up, joints can't. So you really, really have to be going out of your way to do a good GPP before every workout. And remember, a workout is only going to be as effective as the warm-up that precedes it. So remember that. A workout is only going to be as effective as a warm-up that precedes it. So warm-ups are everything, although a lot of the young people take that for granted. You can't come in off the street, especially in winter months, and just go in and get under a bar and start lifting. That's just... you're not going to get much out of that workout. And if you think, oh, well, I don't have time for a warm-up, then you're not going to get the most out of your workout. So that's just faulty thinking as well. So let me see some other questions here. Oh, funny, someone's listening to me on a podcast as they're also listening to the live AMA here. So that's fine. Mike, my business manager, is also listening to us right now, and he's posting links. So he just posted a link to Physique After 50, and he'll be posting other links as we go along, like to Cycle Diet. Don't forget my Cycle Diet book, my Cycle Diet course. You can get it at scottabelfitness.com, and Mike will include the link for that as well. There's nothing bothers me more than people who think they're into fitness and who live such an orthorexic lifestyle that they think they're never going to eat dessert again, or they're never going to eat. We live in a world of food abundance, and that should be enjoyed. It shouldn't be resented, or it shouldn't be guilted upon. And the cycle diet allows people to live in a real world in a real way. So that's why I developed it, and I've been following it for, almost 3 decades now. Andy Sinclair, who you saw on yesterday's live feed, who's a fitness supermodel, he's been on my cycle diet for a decade as well. So when you see him with abs all year long, etc., etc. So that's another feed there. Hey, Amir, just thought I'd say hi. Yeah, so another book, your best book to start with. I get that question a lot, and it's hard for me to answer because I don't know where someone's coming from, and I don't know if they want to learn about metabolism. Do they want to learn about nutrition? Do they want to learn about innovation training or the methodologies that I develop? So it's really hard for me to say what book someone should start with. In terms of methodology, I would always say start with my book, The Abel Approach, and then extend out from there to my actual video programs, things like the Hard Gainer Solution, the Ultimate Figure Program, the 6-Day Hybrid, and just the whole body hypertrophy, things that pop into my mind. Because on my video programs, I also lecture within them. So even though I have someone, even myself, like for the 5-Day Met, doing the work of the program, I also explain the methodology behind it. So it's a great way to learn visually as well. You definitely need the book, The Abel Approach, to learn the methodology, understand the methodology. But when you can see a visual interpretation of that with explanation, I think it helps people to learn faster. So, and I see Mike has just added the link to the Cycle Diet, and don't forget there's a Cycle Diet course and a Cycle Diet book. So that's important. Let me scroll down. So yeah, the best book to start with, Mike, getting fried with some heavy lifting over 20 years. Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, people are starting to come around, you know. When I first became an expert, I was attacked for some of the statements I was making. For instance, that it's an industry myth that, if you train for strength, development will come. That's one of the biggest myths in the whole industry. The truth is, I put that on its head with innovation training, and I say if you train for development, strength will come. So those are two different worlds, right? I mean, if you look at strongman competitors versus bodybuilders at the same world elite level, you don't see the same physiques. You see very, very different physiques. Okay, some are muscular, some have a hybrid genetic predisposition to put on muscle no matter what they did for training. But to think that if you're going to train for strength, development will come is one of the biggest myths in the industry, and the principles behind innovation training prove that. We also talked about some research on my podcast a while back, that all this research that was talking about growth hormone after training and testosterone levels after training and all that stuff, that it really was all incorrect, and that what really led to muscle development was muscle recruitment. And it's funny because 25 years ago when I was arguing this, I was attacked by industry pundits for saying something like that, but now the research shows it's all about fiber recruitment. And fiber recruitment, according to my innovation training principles, doesn't have to do with how much weight is on the bar. It has to do with ranges and planes of motion, both within which a muscle functions and that best targets for that individual. And yesterday in the podcast, I explained all that when I outlined Andy's physique in terms of lines and balance and symmetry. So those are things to consider, but they also take a lot of expertise moving forward. So yeah, you can't teach someone what you've learned in 4 decades in one live Ask Me Anything cast. So and just look below in the feed, folks, and you'll see the stuff that Mike is posting in terms of links for various things. So that's good. Okay, someone following the Cycle Diet asking to know what's the best way to know when you're in super comp. Well, you mentioned one of them. An increased hunger level is good as long as it's a true hunger. A lot of times people become what I call hypersensitive to hunger cues because they're so focused on food and diet that they become more hypersensitive to those elements. So they have a lower threshold for thinking about those things. So there's other things though, sleep patterns, if your energy is going down both throughout the day and within a workout, if your muscles feel flat. Those are the general ones, but within the Cycle Diet course itself, I get real specific about what to look for to make sure you're in super compensation mode. For people who don't know what we're talking about, in my Cycle Diets, again, a diet has to be sustainable. A diet has to do 2 things. It has to serve the body, and it has to be sustainable. So this is why I rule out nonsense like intermittent fasting and no-carb ketogenic diets, etc., etc. I find them to be absolutely ridiculous in long-term equations, and we can talk about that another time. But the fundamental principles of a sustainable diet, it has to serve the body and it has to be sustainable long term. And the cycle diet does that, but it does that by being in a certain metabolic mode, what we call supercompensation mode. And that's all explained in the cycle diet. I also use the example in the cycle diet of professional eaters, people who do professional eating contests for a living who are lean. So if it was just a matter of calories, then every time they overate, they'd get fat. And yet you see a lot of these eating competitors are very tiny, very lean. The Black Widow comes to mind. She once ate 9 pounds of cheesecake in 10 minutes, and she's lean all year long. So there's cues and clues in that if we stop looking beyond these sort of diet industry facades and myths that it's all about calorie counting and calories in and calories out. There's a lot more to it than that. Hopefully, Jennifer, that started answering your question. I'm trying to scroll through here. I don't want to miss anybody, so let me know that I'm getting hello from Palm Beach, Florida. I bet it's a lot warmer there than it is here. I'm looking for more questions. I might have missed some. Does recovery, there's a good question. Does recovery, and sorry if I'm missing the questions, folks, I'm scrolling and I might not be hitting them all because I got big fat fingers on my tiny little iPad. Does your recovery time increase over time? Now, if you're asking, do your recovery time needs increase over time, or does your recovery time get better over time? These are all matters of what we call the training model. Training model boils down to 5 things that are explained in detail in my book, The Abel Approach. Okay, effort is one, training strategy, work capacity, recovery capacity, internal biochemical and hormonal environments. So something, when I look inside, if you look inside my book, The Hard Gainer Solution, for instance, we talk about for how long in the industry hard gainers have basically been ignored because no one looks at their recovery capacity. They always tell them how to train and train for this reason and train for strength, but no one really assessed their recovery capacity. So I do that in the Hard Gainer Solution and explain why a hard gainer needs more frequent stimulation of the body parts, but with less volume in doing so that they can recover and do the same body part over and over again, but with intra-workout and inter-workout recovery. So recovery needs shouldn't increase in time because as your work capacity increases, recovery capacity tends to increase with it. But that's why professional athletes can sort of train at a high level all year round, because the term I've been using lately is they condition into. You condition into a higher level of work capacity, and with that usually comes a better level of recovery capacity at all. But these are things none of the industry experts seem to want to talk about, and it makes no sense to me because these are part and parcel of addressing an individual on an individual level. You might have a good work capacity, but your recovery capacity might be less because of point number 5 in the training model, internal biochemical and hormonal environments. At a certain age, going through menopause, being on certain medicines for medical conditions. These can all affect the internal biochemical and hormonal environment to the point that you might even have great work capacity and recovery capacity, but the medications you're on are creating a problem in terms of cosmetic effects. So you're holding water, you're gaining fat easy. We know, for instance, the corticosteroids are famous for that, right? Things like prednisone and stuff can add weight quite quickly. So sorry, I got a little carried away there. Let me see. Yeah, I keep getting the common question: how many times a week should I work out? Some people do 3 or 4. I do 6. But it depends on a lot of things that have to be considered. What about lifestyle? What about overall lifestyle? For instance, I explain in the Abel Approach, like if someone has, if there's a guy who goes out in the morning, he's in his early 30s and he's on a jackhammer 12 hours a day and he comes home to a wife and 3 kids, well, that lifestyle affects and impacts his recovery capacity because of the amount of stress level throughout the day, both physical and mental, versus someone who's maybe in their 20s still living at home, doesn't have a job, doesn't have to worry about those things. They can maybe do a little more volume and have higher recovery capacity and build more. So there's no hard answer to a question, a generic question, how many times a week should I train? That requires assessment. We talked about in my last podcast that people would say, well, I can train 6 or 7 days a week, and then I would do their assessment and say, well, even though they can train 6 or 7 days a week, that doesn't mean they should be training 6 or 7 days a week, and oftentimes, they're sent their adrenal response sky high because they've been training too frequently for where they were at. So let me try to... is there a tempo to your workout program? Oh boy, am I against tempo training. Again, all these outside-in dictates to the body just give what I call an illusion of control. Biofeedback is what matters. Forget tempo nonsense like raise the weight in 2 seconds and lower it in 4 seconds and hold it for 1 second. That has nothing to do with training science. It just has to do with the illusion of control. Of the 9 things that training can do, one of them is called decreasing transition time. And that has to do with a muscle going from the eccentric through the static to the concentric phase, and a training adaptation. And one of the things and the reasons we train with weights is to decrease that transition time. So if you start focusing on tempos, you're actually defeating the decrease in transition time, which is one of the things that training is supposed to provide. So again, this is one of those things comes out of an over-analysis and a complete misunderstanding of the training principles and the principles of exercise physiology. We have 2 cadences that we should follow in my innervation training. One is the explosive cadence, which means that the intention of contraction is explosive. Now, the more weight you're lifting, the slower that weight's going to move as you approach your maximum load, or what we call limit strength, right? But your intention is explosive. And then the other option for cadence is what we call the pumping cadence. And the pumping cadence, I mean, the best case scenario for learning that, I always refer people to watch the original Pumping Iron movie. You won't see any tempo nonsense. You won't be seeing people writing in journals and all this other modern hoopla that is really confusing the nuts and bolts of this. So we should really get back to like training unplugged and the principles that matter. That would be a good thing. So, yeah. So, sorry, I'm getting some of these are sticking here. Okay, I'm going to go to Sandra. I work out 5 days a week. I do high-intensity cardio. I lift heavy. I am macro counting, but seems like my body is not reacting. I'm not surprised. I have changed my workout, cut out alcohol, not taking any medications, but I just turned 38. What changes could I make to see progress? Well, what you describe, Sandra, is a very generic, like it's a very, I lift heavy and I count macros. Well, maybe you shouldn't be lifting heavy. There's a difference between lifting heavy and lifting hard. I've always said heavy is about how much stress a muscle is under, not how much weight is on a bar. So that has to do with proper technique. Things we'll be addressing every Wednesday. I'll be posting training clips and talking about that. Macro counting, I just don't believe in. Again, it's one of those industry gimmicks that took off, which creates the illusion of control. There's no magic in macros. There never has been. I've never used them, and I developed a world-class physique. My clients don't use them because I don't believe in creating an obsession in people. Remember, my Abel phrase is, mastery is when you own that thing you do, and obsession is when that thing you do owns you. And those are very, very different things, and I believe that fitness should benefit your whole life. It shouldn't become your whole life. So I don't believe in any of that stuff. What you might be doing wrong, well, you might be doing too much high-intensity cardio. And what happens when you do that, Sandra, too much high-intensity cardio, your body will sacrifice the branched-chain amino acids in order to provide energy. So leucine, isoleucine, and valine get sacrificed from the muscles in order to contribute to the ongoing energy to fuel a workout, especially an aerobic workout. And when that happens, of course, you create flat muscles. But not only do you do that, as soon as the branch chains are sacrificed from the muscles, it sends a message to the hypothalamus to downregulate metabolism. So the harder you work and the tighter you diet, you can often create a scenario where you're actually suppressing and repressing metabolism as it starts to adapt to what you're doing in order to survive and in order to keep itself healthy. So a lot of the times you think you're programming yourself for one thing when you're programming yourself for another. And in our recent podcast, we talked about what I call a metabolic tsunami. Whereas people think something's really going well at first. Oh, this diet's perfect. This diet's working great. Low-carb diets tend to be the worst at that. But what they're really doing is creating a metabolic tsunami so that 6 months down the road they look at what's going on with their body and they're like, oh my God, what happened? Well, nothing happened. You program your metabolic compensation system to compensate by slowing down for the lack of energy coming in and the too much energy going out in terms of too much cardio, too much heavy lifting, etc., etc. Your body tends to shut down to compensate. So yeah, so that's something to consider as well. You might want to consider just an individual assessment there, Sandra. Those things take more than I work out this many days a week and I do this. That's a very generic thing. It's like going to the doctor and saying, "Doctor, it hurts when I do this." Well, you got to get to the bottom of that, right? So, thinking about changing from push-pull leg split routine to your hard gainer approach, but have a busy gym time. Can it be done without having two exercises set up side by side? Good question, Richard. I get that a lot, that people say my gym's too busy the time I go to do complexes. You might want to consider a home gym space, or if not, if you're good and you understand the principles of the hard gainer solution, just design your own workout station so you can do stuff side by side without taking up too much gym space. Myself personally, I've never had problem doing complexes at a gym, but I kind of own the space I'm in when I'm at the gym anyway. And you don't do that, arrogantly. You don't do that with a confrontational attitude. You just do it by being serious about what you're doing. But that depends, and I know there's a lot of ifs and things like that about that. But you can also think about getting a one-time custom program, something that'll allow to consider a crowded gym. But again, if your gym's so crowded that you can't train at a reasonable pace, then yeah, you just then you shouldn't be training at that gym, because you have to sustain a training pace. That's just an absolute. That's what we call the fatigue tension threshold, and that's something else I talk about in the Abel approach. That the goal of not just a workout but a program is all about managing fatigue tension threshold. You have to create enough tension in the muscle to produce fatigue, but not exhaustion. So, the mandate seems to be these days train to exhaustion. That seems to be the bragging rights, right? I survived so-and-so's workout or so-and-so's boot camp, which is all nonsense. Training shouldn't be about survival. It should be about progression. It shouldn't be about aiming for exhaustion. It should be about managing exhaustion. Which just reminds me, I'm mentioning a lot of the things I talk about in my podcast. So if you're new to here, maybe sign up for the podcast at Smarter Sculpted Physique on iTunes, and I'm sure Mike will be writing that down as I'm speaking. Okay. Fitness goals. Let me just see here. Yeah, I get a lot of the times I get people writing, and they seem to think that the only worthy fitness goal is to compete. If you saw my podcast yesterday, and sorry about the sideways picture, folks, I'm still getting used to this, when I was pointing out Andy's symmetry in his lines, one of the reasons he became a fitness supermodel, he first came to me, and he's been with me 13 years as a client, and people will often ask people who've been with me that long, well, you must know all his programs now, and you must know what you're doing, so why would you stay with a coach for that long? I've written about that in other articles, etc. But Andy first came to me and had a goal of competing. And I told him that competing would ruin his physique, and that he would do a lot better if he focused on modeling and physique modeling. And sure enough, since then he's been on all kinds of covers of physique magazines and even romance novels and things like that. So he's done it. Mir's just writing in that apparently there's an article recently on one of the popular websites that says body part training is dead. That's just a ridiculous statement. Again, it's all this outside-in stuff that doesn't do an assessment at all of where someone is at. I always say train the muscle, not the movement, but when I developed my MET training methodology, I also said in terms of kinetic chain movements, sometimes you have to train the movement in order to train the muscle. In other words, if you've got a stubborn body part, hitting it more often and hitting it harder isn't going to make it grow, or it would already be growing. So what you do there is you make that muscle part of the weakest chain in a group of acting muscles, and that's where kinetic chain expression comes in, and that can be part of a program. But to say body part training is dead, I actually think the opposite. I think it's coming back in a huge way. My book, Physique After 50, is all about why body part training makes more sense, and bodybuilding, traditional, real bodybuilding training, sans drugs, is the safest and most sustainable way to go for anyone who's over 50, because it protects the joints way better than strength training can do, or explosive training, or things like that. So yeah, so very good. And Amir, just for people out there answering, and I'm answering Amir's question about body part training, I tend to not follow, I don't follow what's being written online, because most of it's garbage, and most of it's people just trying to draw attention for writing something, outrageous, so that other people will like and go to it, or make it controversial, so it creates, I value my time more than that. I'm too busy being an expert with my own expertise and my own methodologies to sort of engage other people who I know are just trying to put fluff out on the internet and create a following. And it's too bad that that's representing expertise these days, because the real experts should be the ones who have the voice, because quiet minds tend to talk the loudest. But yeah, so hopefully, Amir, that answered your question. I wasn't aware of that article. I don't really want to read it because it's actually quite silly. I got a question. Should you mix the hard gainer workouts with working out specific muscle groups? Well, when I have a specific program like Hard Gainer Solution or Physique After 50 or the Ultimate Figure program, just to name a few of them, as soon as you start altering it, you're no longer doing that program. You're doing something else. So you're bastardizing a program, or you're mutating it into something else. And unless you have a real deep expert knowledge, I never recommend doing that, because I've considered all the variables when I write a program like that that's for mass consumption. So that's something to consider as well. You might want to consider that. So, in terms of expertise, I've always said, the internet is the opposite with social media. But to establish true expertise, it's better to go only an inch wide but a mile deep than it is as it's represented on the internet these days. People who try to go a mile wide but only an inch deep, and they don't really understand anything, especially context and nuance and subtlety. So those are the things you need to consider. Question from Paul Flack: low-carb diets creating deamination. Sure, deamination is just break down the word D as in to subtract from, and amination, amino, so to extract from. Deamination just is a process where the body breaks down protein from what makes it special, which is its nitrogen component, and it has to do that to use the calories coming in for energy to supply fuel for a workout or throughout the day. That's why a lot of times these competitors talking through the side of their mouth, like I said, their expertise is a mile wide but only an inch deep. When they say, oh, well, my client, she's eating 5 meals a day, she's not starving, what are you talking about? Well, we're talking about the fact that there's not enough protein-sparing nutrients in the diet, so that protein itself is being broken down, deaminated, stripped of its nitrogen component, to be used for energy. And when that happens, you create a fat-storing machinery, a metabolic machinery, not a fat-burning one. And that reminds me of another point that I need to make. The biggest mistake of people writing me who want to lose weight and or lean out is they want to make it about fat loss and weight loss without any consideration to optimizing metabolism. The first thing you have to set straight is to optimize a metabolism. So for a while you may not be able to or should pay attention to the scale. As a matter of fact, I don't even use a scale, but you have to optimize metabolism. Any weight loss that takes place in a metabolism that's repressed or sluggish isn't weight loss that's going to be sustainable, and that's when you're going to experience what I call that metabolic tsunami effect, where the weight comes back hard and furious, and you don't know why, because you're still being relatively decent with your diet strategy. So you have to watch out that metabolic optimization should be the real priority in terms of physique transformation, etc. You can't focus on weight loss and fat loss without focusing on optimizing a metabolism. That's a losing battle every single time. Let me see what I got here. Sorry, folks, I'm going through these as fast as I can. Muscle recovery and sore muscles. That's a good question. We can use certain adaptogens for that. Adaptogens are substances or procedures that return a body to homeostasis. That's a simple definition of that. About the only useful supplement on the planet is creatine. You don't need vitamins, you don't need minerals, you don't need the rest of it if you have a healthy diet, and that's an argument for another time. But creatine is a relatively good adaptogen, so is regular massage. So is hot baths even. The things you do regularly can help restore recovery and sore muscles. You don't want DOMS to go on for too long. That's a sign of overtraining. So delayed onset muscle soreness, if it goes on for too long, that's an indication that you're trying to punish your body in the gym. And listen, folks, the number one indicator of real expertise and what you should be aiming for, you should be working with your body, not on your body. Your body should be your lifelong partner, not your lifelong project. So get that mentality, mindset. Get right mind leads to right behavior. Okay? Anxious mind leads to anxious behavior. And so the question is about, well, how do I optimize metabolism? Well, that's where diet strategy and expertise comes in. It's not as simple as counting calories and eating things like, and just, you should never be cutting out macros for one thing. Like all this low carbs and keto and all this is just nonsensical, really. Waste of money. Thoughts on glucose disposal agent supplements. That's a mouthful. Waste of money or beneficial? Waste of money. It just screams gimmick. Like I said, there isn't really a supplement on the planet that I think anyone needs. Creatine is beneficial. Creatine also, though, tends to make women hold water. A lot of women don't consider that. So you'll get stronger, but for some reason women tend to hold water on it. So that's an interesting thing. Advice for better activation of the quads. Definitely. What you want to do is make sure they're properly warmed up, and what you want to do is unpin the hips, all right, and the knees. So in my GPP warm-up that you can get at scottabelfitness.com, you'll see how to unload your hips and knees with tubing or TRX or something. Basically, you offset your body weight and you sink down into ass to grass squats or butt to heel squats, and you do it very, very slowly, and then you gradually implement training. A lot of people they're just too quick to get to their workout. Even their warm up, they try to speed through. Your warm up is that time where you're engaging the body to talk to you. You start with arm circles, and you're like, what are my shoulders feeling like today? Maybe I only need to do 10 arm circles. Well, maybe today they're really stiff from yesterday. I need to do 15. But that's where you start listening to your body, and your body's starting to talk to you. All right, so you need to have that ongoing communication if you're going to get anywhere. The reason I preferred becoming a physique transformation specialist is it required more sophistication than just pure strength training or any of the other modes of training that I was running into. To sculpt a physique with different genetics really takes ingenuity and an understanding of not just the science, but the nuance and the subtlety and the individuality. Things I pointed out with supermodel Andy Sinclair yesterday. Again, apologies for the sideways video. Things like that have to be considered. And again, you can't just wrap all this up in a bow in a one-time seminar. We'll be doing more of these, of course. And I'll try to get to all your questions next time. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. And we'll continue at another time. Enjoyed coming at you. By all means, share this. I'm sure the post will last for a while. And, sign up to Scott Abel Fitness and opt in. You can get free books there. My Mindset of Achievement book comes to mind. You can see all my other products and projects, etc. there. And then get your questions ready. And if you opt in there, then you'll get notifications of next time we're going to be doing an AMA online. So we'll probably do this regularly. And one of the things we didn't even touch on, which is essential to my way of thinking, is the one-on-one coaching. Why it's vital, why why it's something I believe in so strongly that I do it for a living, and the fact that I do it online. My clients are all over the world. People will often ask me, well, how can I train with you if you know, I live in another country, or I live like in another city? Well, you should be paying for expertise, not proximity. I'm not a personal trainer, I'm a coach. Coaching entails personal training. The reverse isn't true. So coaching is all about, when you're coaching a person, not a program. If it was just about coaching a program, I'd do a P90X and send it out to all of you and wouldn't be bothered. But when you coach the person. The program and the diet strategy fit the person. The person should not be fitting the program and the diet strategy. That's why all these things change. And I'll just finish with coaching. Consider what coaching actually is when it's real. Coaching is 3 things. It's accountability, and it's support, and it's ongoing interaction, supplying both of those things. So hopefully as you're going along, you're signing up for one reason, you're continuing for another, because you grow as a person. There's no point in transforming your physique if it doesn't transform your personal growth as well. You know, I always used to say in my seminars when I was a bodybuilder, I used to say, you know, there should be a point to all this, and if you're just a jerk at 180 pounds, then you're just a bigger jerk at 200 pounds. If the process didn't affect you and you didn't become a better person through it. So fitness can be grander than just the cosmetic elements of it, folks. And I wish more people would consider that. So I'm going to sign off, and hopefully you benefited from this. By all means, please leave your comments. If you have questions you'd like us to address next time, just send them to admin@scottabelfitness.com, and Mike will be all over that. And I'm sure after this is done and we've signed off, Mike will make, if you look in the comment section, I'm sure that Mike will post any relevant links that I've mentioned throughout. And if you haven't heard of me before and you're getting this for the first time and you like podcasts, go to Smarter Sculpted Physique, and you can start at our first podcast. And I really appreciate all these thumbs up that are coming in. That's kind of cool, dancing across the screen. So yeah, and then next time you'll learn, you know, like the old side view mirrors in your car used to say, objects in mirror are closer than they appear. Well, next time you come on, you'll know, don't adjust your advice, because the object on your device, myself, is a lot better looking than he appears. So I'll sign off, and I'll see you next time, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and by all means, spread the word and share the video.